Welcome to High Leverage Equitable Strategies. If you have questions about this presentation or any of the strategies, or you'd like to work with an instructional coach on planning and implementation, use the QR to reach out to a coach in your content area. The strategies you'll see today are the What, Why, Square, Heads Together, Numbered Spoons, Cognitive Content Dictionary, also known as the CCD, Call and Response, Community Circle, and using a microphone. These strategies work well together and can be used throughout any learning experience in conjunction with each other. The strategies were identified by the Professional Learning Department as being highly engaging and equitable. They are also taught to new teachers entering the district, and the instructional coach and mentor team works with first and second year teachers on implementing these strategies into their daily practice. In this video, you'll be introduced to each strategy, the steps on how to use it in your classroom, tips to make the most of these practices, and most importantly, what aspects of the strategies makes them engaging and equitable. Before leaving today, you'll get resources so you can enhance your use of these tools. We know that most teachers are doing versions of these strategies in some capacity already. Our goal is to refine your use of these strategies to make them even more equitable for students. Let's get started. The Puyallup School District has identified the following instructional strategies as being culturally responsive. They increase engagement and personal connections by incorporating student voice and collectivist structures. These practices stem from the principle that culturally responsive educators leverage the cultural assets of their students to create meaningful connections to the content. A quote from Dr. Stembridge's book, Culturally Responsive Education in the Classroom. Mindset matters way more than strategies, but you can start with strategies in your effort to be more responsive. The why of your strategic efforts is infinitely more important than the what. Think of these strategies as a starting point to enhance your equitable learning environment. We're going to begin with the What, Why, Square. This strategy is to share and engage students in learning targets and rationale. In order to teach you about that, we'll jump right into a demonstration of today's learning targets. Here's a blank What, Why, Square. I'm going to transition into teacher mode now. Today we will focus on equitable and engaging instructional strategies. Put your heads together and discuss. What does this target mean to you? Then I'd hear from each group. Put your heads back together and discuss, why is this target important? Why are we learning this? Then again, I'd hear from each group. Here's our why. Engaging students is the heart of learning. By using engaging instructional strategies and being intentional about student voice, we provide equitable access to learning for all students. We'd also like to take this time to share success criteria with you. When you finish today, you'll be able to understand the connection between student voice and collectivist structures and equitable student outcomes, and implement high leverage strategies into your daily practice. Let's review the steps you just saw. First, the teacher tells the students the target. Then the teacher asks the students to restate, what do you think you'll learn today? The students put their heads together and talk about the what. Then they share out using numbered spoons. More on these strategies later. That process is repeated with the why. Finally, the teacher shares their why for the target. The What, Why, Square is a good time to also share success criteria with your students. How will they know they've got it? What will they be able to do with their new knowledge or skills? Some of you may remember being asked to post your learning objectives on your board each day at some point. The possible problem with that is that sometimes they were posted and maybe never mentioned again. Let's talk about the components of the What, Why, Square. The purpose of communicating learning targets with students is to provide them with a clear path for their learning. When students know what their end goal is, and even the assessment criteria attached to it, they will be able to self-assess their progress toward that goal. The traditional method of posting learning objectives on the wall meets this step. You're telling the what. Here's where it gets better. With the What, Why, Square, students are asked to articulate what they're learning. In younger grades, they may just repeat back what you said, and that's okay to start. With time, students will be able to go deeper and summarize what it is they'll think they'll be doing in that particular lesson. The more you can recall the target throughout the lesson, the clearer their final destination becomes. Now the why. This is a step that may not have been included in the traditional method. Adding rationale to the conversation of learning targets creates a personal connection to the learning and increases engagement. This increases student motivation. When you share your why, you're providing a model for students for the next time. Share this target and why it's important to future lessons, how it builds on previous lessons, how it can help them in other content areas, and what real-world applications the skill has. When students feel a personal connection to the learning, they will be more engaged. The most important part, a teacher telling the target and rationale is a step above just posting the standard on the board. However, when students can articulate their what and why, this establishes a culture for learning and increases their independence for their education. They are now authentically engaged in the process. The addition of success criteria facilitates self-assessment. Here are some tips for the What Why Square. The learning targets can be presented in a What Why Square at the beginning of your lesson or unit. On days when you're continuing with the same target, you can quickly review the what and the why and ask students if they want to add to the why from the previous day. Because you began with a discussion about the objectives, you will be able to refer back to that goal throughout the lesson. This focuses students, especially if they feel overwhelmed with the learning. It helps them see the most important part of the lesson. At the end of the lesson or unit, you can use the What Why Square to guide students in some self-reflection. Did we meet our target? You can also use this time to look ahead to the next lesson. The What Why Square you saw was digital, of course. That's perfectly fine, especially if you teach secondary. Another more common method, especially in elementary, is to create a 4-square on your board with tape or some other writing utensil. Instead of writing multiple long sentences, teachers can keep the target short and simple. In the student What Why Squares, you can add a check mark after the discussion or bullet point a few keywords or phrases. The same goes for the teacher Why Square. The first time you do this with your class, it may be very quick because they're not used to discussing targets, or it may take longer because they're unfamiliar with the process. Stick with it. Try to use this at least once a day and then add it into more subjects or classes. The more often they participate, the more effective and smooth it will be. The square itself is the recipe. As you get comfortable with that, you can adapt however you think would benefit your students the most. The most important part is the discussion with students about what we're learning and why it's important. What makes this strategy equitable? The What Why Square incorporates student voice. This is the most crucial piece for students to be able to connect with the learning. The prior knowledge and experiences shared during the discussions are leveraged as assets. What a student already knows and feels about the targets and their rationale can be the spark for another student, which is why it's so important that they share with each other. Finally, the equitable spread of opportunities to respond means that every voice can be heard, rather than calling on raised hands. For conversations as important as these, that last component is very important. Did you know that immediately practicing a new skill is one way to ensure transfer of your learning? Don't skip this step. Here's an action item for you. Pause this video and write a What Why Square for a lesson coming up in your class. Here are some guiding questions. What should students learn or be able to do? Why is that learning important? You can tell how it links to previous or future learning, or what real-world applications exist for the target. Finally, think about success criteria. How will students know they've got it? Unpause this video when you're ready to continue. We're going to move on to a new strategy, heads together. This is used for collaborative processing. Something you've probably heard of before is 10 and 2. This essentially means that for every 10 minutes of information, give 2 minutes to process. Here's an addition to that. Research has shown that the average age of your group is the length of their attention span. So keep that in mind. You've got 5 minutes or less with kindergartners. If you teach secondary, A 20 or 30-minute lecture needs to be broken up for some processing. Let's talk about how to build your collaborative groups. Groups of 4 are ideal for conversation. 6 or more in a group might mean that not everyone gets a voice. Begin with activities that are not cognitively challenging to build teamwork skills. Students of all ages need to be taught and coached on how to interact in a group conversation. Consider teaching different group roles or using talk structures that will add a protocol to sharing that keeps voices equitable. And finally, think of how you mix students and all the different ways to vary levels within a group. One way to allow for processing is to give time for discussion. What we know about language and learning is that it's socially constructed. If you have multilingual students, time to process in a group is crucial to their language development. In the end, all students benefit from multiple opportunities to talk about their learning. This is the diamond pattern of interaction. It is the recommended method to follow to allow learners to process new information. After a prompt from the teacher, we begin with solo processing. This is an opportunity for the learner to gather their thoughts before sharing in a group. It's important not to skip this step because it reduces the possibility that their opportunity to share or even think will be seized by someone else who is a faster processor. Next comes small group processing. This allows for collaboration on an idea and calibrating their thinking. This small group time increases engagement because it's a low-risk environment where most will feel comfortable to share. And it's an equitable environment that opens up for an even spread of student voice. Following this small group discussion, students can report out to the whole group about the conversation that took place. This is a great time for students and the teacher to work together to synthesize ideas and capture the big idea. Here's a step that's easy to forget. Following a whole group share out, allow for some time for individual processing one more time. This way, students can add to their own notes or reflect on their new learning that was gained from being a part of the process. Here are some tips for heads together. As stated previously, this skill needs to be taught to students explicitly. Teach students to physically turn towards each other and lean in whenever possible. This will help voice levels stay at an appropriate level where they can be heard. Choose appropriate questions for a heads together. You may have heard the phrase turn and talk. We like to think of a heads together as a turn and learn. This is processing time for students to internalize their new learning. It won't be a yes or no or this or that answer. It may not even be a prompt with a correct answer. Those questions are better suited for a turn and talk with one other person. For example, tell your neighbor the answer and how you got it, or even a choral response altogether. Heads together prompts should involve some discussion, explanation, supporting your thoughts with evidence, and so on. Finally, the heads together strategy is a way to lower the affective filter in your room. Creating a low-risk opportunity for students to share their thinking and hear from others is a culturally responsive practice that doesn't put students on the spot and also allows for all students to have the opportunity to be heard. Here's an action item for you. Pause this video and think of a prompt for a lesson coming up in your class. Here are some tasks you might use for prompts. Discuss, explain, elaborate, or problem solve. Unpause the video when you're ready to continue. Following heads together, you may use numbered spoons or numbered heads to hold an equitable whole class discussion. Recalling the diamond pattern of interaction, after you've given a prompt and provided solo think time, and then small group processing through a heads together, to share whole group, you can use numbered spoons. Students are numbered 1 to 4 in each group, or the number you have in each group. Pull one number and hear from that person in each group. That student can share their idea, a teammate's idea, or summarize the conversation as a whole. Replace the spoon and carry on. This strategy holds all students accountable for being active listeners
even if they didn't contribute a lot to the conversation. If the student called is having trouble remembering, the group can put their heads back together. This is an equitable discussion technique. It eliminates the chance that our implicit biases might be influencing who we hear from most in our class. You may be wondering how this is different from name or number sticks, where you have a stick per student. First, if I pull 4 sticks and hear from 4 students, those students do not have an obligation to share anything they heard from their teammates, creating an individualistic share-out. Additionally, more than one stick could come from the same group. But on the other hand, if I pull 1 spoon and hear from that member from each of my 4 or 5 groups, we may hear a better representation of the discussions from across the room. Probability-wise, if I pull 1 number, each student has a 1 in 4 chance of getting to share with spoons, versus a 1 in 25 chance. As a final note, numbered spoons are not used to cold call on students. It is only appropriate to use after students have had the opportunity to collaborate and calibrate their thinking in their teams. As with all strategies, explicitly teaching students how to participate with low risk and non-academic tasks is a great way to start. Here's an action item for you. Pause this video and make a plan for your physical classroom. Are your students seated in groups? How do you identify the groups? Some teachers use college team names, animals, colors, or shapes. For numbered spoons, you will put a number on each desk in a group or simply ask the students to number off before pulling a spoon. Alternatively, you could use a letter or shape. For example, at the red table, there might be 4 students, A, B, C, and D. Your spoons would have letters on them. Some teachers who number students for ease of assignments and materials, etc., prefer to use something other than numbers on their spoons so you don't confuse their class number. How else might you use your numbered spoons? Consider using them for choosing students to gather supplies for their table, bring turned-in papers to you, or you could have a heads together with a different group. Here's an example. If you number the corners of your classroom 1 to 4, instead of having a heads together with their table, they could meet with their number partners in the designated corner. All the number 1s would get to discuss together, and so on. We know some teachers don't use sticks or spoons at all, but a dice or random number generator. Feel free to shake it up. The main element is hearing from one member of each group. Unpause the video after you've reflected and you're ready to continue. Let's talk about the Cognitive Content Dictionary, a strategy to teach academic vocabulary. The Cognitive Content Dictionary, or the CCD, is engaging and collaborative. This strategy incorporates prior knowledge and prediction skills that leverage students' backgrounds and personal experiences. Multiple exposures to the term help students collaboratively build meaning over time and increases chances that students will be able to use the word correctly and confidently. The meaning of the word is internalized through various activities and personal interactions. Research shows that we need to be exposed to terms between 8 and 80 times before it's committed to long-term memory. The CCD also employs elements like color chunking, sketches, and physical gestures, which all improve brain imprinting and comprehensibility. Not every word or key term in every subject needs to be on a CCD chart. Of course, you'll teach the terms necessary to comprehend each lesson. However, only words that are high leverage and contain enduring understanding across multiple units, grades, or contents are the best fit for the CCD chart. Tier 2 words that are process or task words are perfect for the CCD because students will be exposed to these words in multiple subject areas, improving their ability to generalize the meaning in various settings and applications. Additionally, Tier 3 words that are specific to the content are also great for the CCD because students may not have enough background knowledge to figure out their meaning and context. Often, these words provide awesome opportunities to break the words apart through morphology activities, investigating roots and affixes and how they build the word's meaning. Important to note, the CCD is a multi-day process. On day 1, the word is introduced. A survey is given if students have heard the word before, predictions are made as a group, and a signal word with the gesture is taught. Signal words can be synonyms, shortened definitions, or even a phrase you want students to think of when they hear the word. For example, a call-in response for claim might be, "What do I want my audience to know?" That isn't necessarily the meaning of the word claim, but it's a saying that the teacher can use repeatedly to remind her students how to write a strong claim. Students will interact with the word over multiple days, and the teacher will design many applications in multiple settings. The call and response will be used for an attention signal, for a transition word, and for whenever the word comes up in the lesson. The goal is to use the word as many times as possible to build context for students. For example, if the word is observe, you might ask in science, "What do you observe about the leaves on this plant?" You may say during a transition, "I'm observing some students carrying their materials safely." You may ask during writing, "What observations did you make about your partner's paragraph?" After a day or two, students will form a final definition together. The teacher will add this definition and a sketch to the chart. And they will also practice using the word in oral sentences. A new word may be introduced next. You can see this process is very involved, and it's meant to engage students in ongoing discussion and use of their new word in multiple contexts, which is why Tier 2 academic terms fit well with this strategy. Pause the video now and use this QR code to watch an instructional video from our PSD YouTube channel showing the CCD in action. The Cognitive Content Dictionary is an equitable practice for multiple reasons. The collaborative nature of the strategy allows students to explore and make meaning in a low-risk environment. Prior knowledge and predictions leverage their experience and backgrounds, creating personal connections to the word and making it more comprehensible. Finally, the total physical response and multiple exposures provide students the opportunity to learn over time and do not assume comprehension after a single exposure. Pause the video now for some personal reflection. What is a vocabulary word you teach in your grade level or content area? Is this word important both over time and multiple content areas? Unpause the video after you've reflected and when you're ready to continue. Let's move on to a new strategy, call and response. This is a tool for gathering attention, transitioning, increasing engagement, and vocabulary instruction. Again, as with learning targets, we know teachers are using attention signals. These slides are meant to refine your practice and make them even more engaging, equitable, and effective. If you're an elementary teacher, you'll recognize this poster, but don't let it scare you off if you teach older students. Effective call and response attention signals engage the listening skills no matter the age level. Beyond elementary, attention signals are just as important for an equitable learning environment, and the skills and participation in the signal still need to be explicitly taught. You can use a call and response for more than just an attention signal. You can also use them to reinforce academic vocabulary, celebrate as a class, and instill class mottos or mantras. These might be sayings or phrases that you often use to encourage traits or skills that you want students to remember. An example might be, "The first thing I do is always the same," and students respond, "I pick up my pencil and write my name." An example from a secondary class that we saw recently was the teacher said, "This work is hard," and students responded, "But we are strong." And that was something that teacher used to encourage students to try their best. Let's talk about the different ways to create and deliver an attention signal. These can be verbal, where you say something and the students respond back. For example, the very popular "class, class," and students respond, "Yes, yes." These signals can also be nonverbal. For example, you might deliver a call and students might respond by looking up, participating in a physical gesture, or maybe just stop their conversation when they hear or see the signal. Other nonverbal signals from the teacher might be a hand in the air or a finger to the lips. Another popular call and response method is musical. This might be a bell, chime, or clapping pattern. Make sure your students know how to respond when they hear the signal. Finally, here's our best tip. No matter what you're using for an attention signal or call and response, our suggestion is to include some sort of physical component. Even if it's for academic vocabulary, that physical response helps imprint the information in our brains. For attention signals, imagine your students are doing a craft, they're cutting or gluing, and you need to interrupt with an instruction. Having their hands still will ensure they are safe while listening. Also, still hands means it's quiet enough for everyone to hear. Some examples of physical gestures are hands on top, everybody stop, and students put their hands on their heads. I've seen in secondary classrooms where teachers say slant and students fold their fingers, lean in, and look at the speaker. Another quick example is eyes up or hands and eyes. Here, the teacher says a call and students respond by resetting their physical posture to demonstrate active listening. This is especially helpful if your students are on laptops and need to look up from the screen for some instruction. If their hands leave the keys, or if you ask for laptop lids to be half closed, you might have a better chance of getting their attention when you need it in that moment. In order for your students to not only be able to hear the message, but also see it, a physical component to your call and response will encourage still and quiet bodies with eyes up. So, whatever method you decide, it needs to be taught explicitly, practiced, and reviewed when necessary. It's also a good idea to rotate through signals to keep students fresh. We all have our favorites. Try to shake it up every once in a while. Here are our tips for attention signals. We've already mentioned, but it bears repeating. Do not assume your students know what to do when you deliver a signal. Teach it explicitly. What do they do when they hear or see the signal? What should they say? After they say it, what do they do next? What do their bodies do? What do their eyes do? Time spent teaching your attention signals will be paid back exponentially with shortened transition times and increased learning time. And again, adding a physical component will ensure that student bodies are still and quiet and that those around them can hear the message. This is very important. If you are asking students to be silent, you must model silence while you wait for their attention. This includes thanking or praising students who are quiet. That seems counterintuitive, but be aware, any voices in the room are adding noises, yours included. One tip is to include a physical component for yourself, such as a finger over your lips. This helps to remember to wait. We've all seen the funny meme of teachers saying, "I'll just wait," but it's so true. Modeling quiet while you wait for quiet is the clearest and most consistent message for your students. And because we know we don't and will never live in perfection, you may need to repeat when necessary. If you're waiting and you've done the modeling of quiet, give it another shot. You might say, "All right, students, let's see if we can do that cleaner and quicker," and deliver your attention signal again. Maybe reteach it if necessary. Let's access a video of examples using this QR code. Pause the video while you view it and unpause when you're ready to continue. You might be asking, why did we include attention signals in a presentation about equitable strategies? Here's how this practice makes your classroom more equitable. Attention signals establish clear routines and procedures. When you teach these explicitly, you're placing all students on the same playing field, making no assumptions for what they know or don't know about your expectations. Delivering an attention signal and encouraging 100% participation communicates consistency. Holding high expectations for all students in your room means that you respect each person in this learning environment and you don't hold different expectations for different students. Most importantly, when you get the class's attention, we know your intent is not to be the center of attention. Making sure the class is quiet means you're also making sure everyone has access to the following message, instruction, or information, regardless of where they're sitting, who they're sitting near, or what their hearing abilities might be. Let's talk about using a call and response to reinforce academic language, as you saw with the Cognitive Content Dictionary. Research has shown that people need anywhere between 8 and 80 exposures to a new term before they can learn it and use it accurately. That's a large range. We can't know the magic number for our students, and so using an attention signal that includes academic terms and their meanings increases their exposure to the word. The verbal repetition not only increases their exposures, but also gives them multiple opportunities to hear the word and practice pronouncing it. Here's the formula for a strong vocabulary call and response. The teacher says the word, and the students respond with the word, the response, and the word again. This way, they're linking the word with the meaning, and they're getting practice saying both. The response can be a lot of things. You can use synonyms. For example, if the word is hypothesis, the students can respond with hypothesis, prediction, hypothesis. They can also be shortened definitions, not exactly the full meaning, but something short to help students remember. For example, observe, look and think, observe. Finally, the response can be a thinking stem, not necessarily what the word means, but something you want them to think of when they hear the word. For example, a kindergartner that calls their students authors, a kindergarten teacher that calls their students authors might want them to remember what they can do as authors. So their response might be, author, I can write, author. Just like with attention signals, vocabulary will be better retained when a physical component is included. For example, asking students to make an acute angle with their arms while saying less than 90 degrees will help them remember what it looks like. Finally, these can be used for all sorts of things, to gather attention, transition from one activity or place to the next, and within the lesson to reinforce the learning. They can be used with the CCD chart, but they don't have to be. Anywhere you can fit in these vocabulary call and response examples will increase student exposure to the terms and meanings. Using call and response to celebrate as a class can help build community and collaborative environments. These can be done to celebrate the whole class on an achievement, a group, or individual students. They can include class mantras or mottos as mentioned before. Pause this video and use the QR code to view a video of some examples of celebrations. Return here when you are ready to continue.
You're going to watch a 2-minute video. Watch for the different call and responses this teacher uses.
Class. Yes. Thank you. I see 2 more people just finishing up their last part. And teammate 2, will you bring the pens up here? And wait. When you hear the signal word. And teammate 3, you're going to stack the pictures over here. We're going to revisit them and talk about them later. I'll put them up on the wall. And, oh, that's nice. And you can, I'll leave pens out so you can add some more during the week. But for right now, teammate 3. Anybody tell me what you're going to do? Anybody, teammate 3. What are you going to do?
Take the pictures
Over there. Teammate
2 has to get the pin. 1.
Goodness. When you hear the signal word, ready? Opinion.
Opinion. My belief. Opinion.
Thank you. Yes, please. At your tables, love. At your tables. Okay. When you hear the signal word, you are going to turn to CCD. If you were at red team, you are going to come over in your spot. Okay, ready? Wait. Listen to the signal word. Sit down. Fact.
Something that can prove.
Thank you. Okay. Turn to the
You may have noticed the teacher used an attention signal with her hand up and finger to lips, and students mimicked that gesture. She also gave a verbal call of hands and eyes to quiet their bodies so the class could hear her. She used academic words for transitioning and had multiple words in use.
Here's another action item for you. Pause this video and think of a vocabulary word you have coming in a lesson. Design a call and response for the word. Here are some guiding questions. What do you want students to think of when they hear that word? What gesture could enhance the call and response? Unpause this video after you've reflected and you're ready to continue.
So how do you build an environment where students are comfortable taking risks in all of these strategies? Community Circle is one way to cultivate respectful and affirming environments. The following video shows some clips from a community circle. You can find this and many other instructional strategy videos on our Professional Learning YouTube channel.
As a reminder, this is our talking piece. You're only speaking if you have the talking piece in your hand. As always, feel free to pass if you don't have anything to say, but I strongly encourage you guys to share with one another, because the best way to learn is to learn from others, and we want to learn as much as we can here, so let's share as much as we can here so that we can learn. So the topic of today is in reference to what we learned about in second steps in the video we watched about jumping to conclusions. The girl in the video, so when we were talking about this morning, I noticed a lot of people wanted to share out or share instances of where they jumped to a conclusion and how that worked out for you. So take a minute to think of a time that you jumped to a conclusion. Were you right? Were you wrong? And how did that affect you? Take a minute to think first. Okay. I think I'm ready. I'll start. Yeah. Right? Jumping to conclusions. So just much like we make inferences and conclusions in reading, you take what's in the text or your evidence, and then your brain, what you're thinking, to make that conclusion. So if you're like, oh, my sister always makes me mad, that's the text evidence, right? Evidence. She always makes me mad. She always makes me mad. Your head, she's saying, oh, she always makes me mad. Like this has happened time and time again. You are drawing the conclusion that it's going to be the same way. Might be, might not always. Okay, we're going to do a real quick whip around. And I need you to think back, way back to last night. And think of one thing that was on your dinner plate. Take 10 seconds to think, because I'm going to need a minute too. Okay, I'm ready. We'll go this way this time. On my plate was
Pizza.
all right. Here's what I'm going to give you 2-step directions. Are you ready? We're going to list our multiples of 4. Then you're going to stand up and you're going to give someone a high five and say, hey, have a good day. Are you ready? Go.
4, 8, 12, 16, 20, 24, 28, 32, 36, 40, 44, 48.
The purpose of Community Circle is to create a sense of safety and connection before learning. In order for our brains to be open to taking risks or engage in deep thinking, we need to feel safe in our learning environments. Community Circle is one way to build and maintain connections with and amongst students. It also provides a space and process to amplify student voice. Teachers can use information learned during circles to connect and engage students in the learning. as well as tackle classroom topics that will improve culture and climate. Here are some tips for Community Circle. This is a great way to begin or end your day, or both. For specialists or secondary classes, 5 minutes at the beginning or end of your class period seems like a lot to give up, but the time you'll receive in return by enhancing your classroom culture will be well worth it. Be sure to teach and practice explicit expectations. Remember that the purpose is to build safety for risk-taking, so clear expectations will avoid negative experiences in circle. Standing in a physical circle provides equitable access to see and hear the speaker. The teacher should provide prompts for sharing in a circle and begin with low-risk topics. Using a talking piece ensures that only one voice is being used at a time. Something that will probably happen is that students are being great listeners and making connections, which is what we want. But remind students that the talking piece signifies the only speaker, and they can use nonverbal gestures to make connections. For example, a thumbs up, a Me Too signal, a connection, etc. You may even consider giving students a minute or two to connect on the way back to their seats after circle. For example, go ask a follow-up question to something interesting you heard during today's circle. One caution: eye contact is not a social norm in all cultures, so consider teaching expectations for active listening that do not require eye contact.
Our final strategy seems obvious, but we'd like to share some tips on microphone use. Research shows students' learning improves when educators use microphone systems in the classroom. The microphone provides equitable access to a clear voice and even distribution of sound. The use of a microphone avoids assumptions in the hearing abilities of our students or conflicting ambient noise around the room. When you use a microphone to amplify your voice and student voices, you are communicating that your classroom is a place where voices are valued and respected. We know you'll hear teachers claim they have a loud voice, but remember, loud doesn't always mean clear. Use a microphone for both your voice and student voices every day.
Here are some tips to best use your microphone. Wear your microphone to remain hands-free. You can also use the lanyard to adjust the distance from your mouth. Also, adjust the volume of your system. A microphone that is too loud can result in buzzing, feedback, or affect sensitive ears. Your volume should be just high enough to be heard. Slowly increase the volume, and when you can just start to hear yourself from the speakers of your system, stop there. Make sure to charge your microphone when not in use, and make the microphone available for student use as well. The following video shows the first 10 minutes of a secondary social studies class, where the teacher introduces the learning target and key vocabulary for the lesson. It is an example of using 6 of the 7 high-leverage strategies at once.
You know, our learning target is the work we're doing we have been doing this week, and today specifically. What positive contributions did the different cultural groups bring to the 13 colonies? We started yesterday identifying or predicting what we thought the word culture meant. Everybody knew what that word was, but what we talked about is sometimes it's hard to define it. And you came up with some good ideas of what your prediction was on what the word culture meant. I'm going to share with you the definition we're going to use. It's the characteristics and knowledge of a particular group of people. So you'll notice we did pretty well as you were guessing what you thought that word meant. So the last piece we're going to do for this word is to use that in a sentence. So what I haven't had you do yet is number off. So would you please count off again 1 to 6? If you don't have 6, who's going to take the extra?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
All right, would you show me ones? Who are my ones? Raise your hand, please. Ones. Ones at this table. Who's the one? One is Isaac. Okay, show me twos, please. Who's twos? 2, 2, 2, 2. Thank you. 3s. Who are my 3s? 4s. Yep. Good. 5s. And show me who's my 5? Okay, got it. Who's my 6s? How'd you solve that one? Thanks for taking 2, some of you that did that. All right, your task. Would you please talk at your tables about how you would use the word culture? Give me an example of the word culture in a sentence. All right, take about 15, 20 seconds. Go. Yes. Sure.
There's different cultures in the world.
All right. Be ready to share your group's response. Make sure everybody's ready to roll. We're going with 4s. Would you please stand up? 4s. 4s on your feet, please. All right. Liam, we'll start with you. Voices off so we can hear. Culture in a sentence, please.
Some people have other cultures than others.
Thank you. Good. What else? Kira, what's your groups?
Everyone has different cultures.
Excellent. Jonah?
German culture has weird foods.
Different foods.
Part of the American culture is Thanksgiving.
Thanksgiving. Good. What else?
Important to learn about different cultures.
Important to learn about different cultures.
Some cultures have different beliefs.
Excellent. Good job. So we're just going to check it off that we accomplished that task. And one more time, our total physical response for culture. When I say the word culture, you repeat it. Culture. Culture. A group's way of life. Culture. Excellent. We're going to move on to our last word for this lesson and activity. The word is immigrant. All right, the word is immigrant. I want you to turn and talk to your table. What are predictions? Like I said yesterday, when I ask you how many have heard of this word, immigrant, raise your hand. Immigrant, if you've heard of the word. Okay, similar to yesterday, all 34 of you have heard of the word. How many haven't? There was none. Not heard, 0. We've talked about how sometimes we're familiar with those words, but then to try to put it in a definition can sometimes be a little tricky. Maybe not for this one. Let's give it a shot. So take about 20 seconds again at your tables. I'm going to ask you for your prediction. What does it mean?
It means, somebody who
Lives in another place. Somewhere else. Somebody's got lives in another country other than
All right, let's have our ones stand, please. Ones. Ones. Good. Elise, what was your group's prediction back there? All right. Someone who moves from one country to another. Thank you, Elise. You can have a seat. What was yours, Isaac?
A person who comes from a different country to live or work in a different.
Okay, so similar to that, almost. Yep. What else, Kara?
Someone who moves somewhere other than their birth country.
Okay, good. What else, Omero?
That's exactly what.
Okay, and I'm going to kind of just put checks because you're all saying something very similar, which is great, just in different words. You can sit, Omero. Thank you.
who moves from one place to another.
Okay, good. What else?
someone who lives in a different country but then starts a new life.
Starts a new life in a different country. Good. I'm just going to check those. Where yesterday we had a little bit more variety, today in this particular word, you were very similar. So our column response today, when I say the word immigrant, you're going to say immigrant. And I actually looked, we're going to learn some sign language with this one because I was really struggling on what we were going to do for this one. So our response is going to be a person who lives in a different country. Now this is the sign language for person, and this is the sign language for different. All right, so let's try it. Immigrant. Immigrant. A person who lives in a different country. Immigrant. Nicely done. Good job. All right, we're going to move on now to our last activity before we get started looking at those culture bags today, because that's going to be the work that we'll get to do today and see everybody's creativity on your items you've made. So I've said this to you already. Our learning target is to identify the positive contributions made by cultural groups in the 13 colonies. I always tell you this if you're sitting at home talking about what you did today instead of saying nothing, you're going to put this in your own words. So talk at your table. What is it we are doing today? What is the what? Go for it. All right, fives this time. Would you please stand? Number 5. What are we doing today, fives? Nina, who's the 5 in your team? It's Nina. All right, here we go. Hi, Leah, we'll start with you. We're figuring out different cultural groups. Nina, what did your team say? Help her out. Yeah, good. Good teamwork back there. Thanks for helping her. What was your table group?
Learning how to see different cultures within the colonies.
Within the colonies. What else?
Just learning about the positive contributions made by culture.
Okay. What else? They've got it. Same. Sophia, similar?
Finding out what good things groups brought.
Yeah, what good things groups brought to the colony. So good job. It's a little challenging to try to put that in your own words. There's only so many ways you can say it, but you did well. Kara, would you put those away, please? So our last one is the why. Why have we spent all this time? Really, we've been talking about the 13 colonies and immigrants to the colonies. Why have we been doing that? So that's my next question for you. Talk at your tables. Why is this learning important? Why? Go for it.
What, like, the cultural groups made it different than others.
All right, here we go. The whys. This time, let's hear from number 2. If you're a 2, would you stand, please? All right, we're going to hear your groups. Why? Why did you think, or why is this learning important for us today, Rebecca? Be good listeners, please. Okay, good. Let's make some comparisons. Yeah, good. What else?
So we can learn the negatives and positives about all the culture groups and how they interact with each other.
Okay, yes. What else?
Because we need to know the history.
The history behind it. Yeah, what else?
Learn the past, and if they did make mistakes, don't do them again.
Okay, good. What else?
Different cultures is the base of all countries.
Yes, thank you. Good job. Similar to, and say it for us. What was it?
How the different people come into America, and it's like what we go off of like every day.
Yeah, good. I like you said it in your own words. Nice. Here's the teacher thought behind this one. So learning about these different cultural groups and their contributions help us understand why the United States has such a diverse population. We see it happen right from the beginning, all these different cultural groups. And then it helps us appreciate the many contributions by these cultural groups. So we are made up of a lot of different cultures, and that is the value of really kind of understanding how we started and what we can learn and grow from those experiences. Nice job on that. So we're going to get into the work now. What you're going to need on your desk are your graphic organizers and a new piece of paper. Would you take a minute, please, and take all that out? Your graphic organizers and a new piece of paper, please.
Oh, okay.
For an easy reference, we have a bookmark you can download and print. One side will outline the high leverage strategies as described in this video. The opposite side gives the overarching practice behind the principle. While we believe that a recipe should be tried as written the first time, we know that in order to suit the strategies to each individual teaching setting and purpose, there may be some adjustments needed along the way. The practice side of the bookmark will allow you to review the purpose behind the strategy, so that as you modify for your own setting, you maintain the integrity of what makes the strategy equitable. An example of this is the What Why Square. The purpose is to share learning objectives and set goals as a class. While you may not use the exact square and process presented in this video, the idea is that the process has students articulating learning goals and rationale. So keep in mind that any modifications should also keep that component intact. You can access this bookmark by using the QR code on the screen. It can also be found by searching for high leverage in the curriculum repository. To dive deeper into the strategies, this is the quick sheet. You can access the strategies, tips, and links and QR codes to videos. Use the QR in the corner of this slide to access the PDF.
While we have you, check out the PSD Professional Learning YouTube channel for a lot more instructional strategy videos.
Thank you for watching. Please reach out to any of the instructional coaches for support.